We welcome in Ian Begley, SNY NBA Insider, host of The Putback, which is their digital show as well on SNY. Beggs, we had you a couple of weeks back. Sal is off today, so I'm going solo. What's going on, buddy? How you been?
I'm good, BT. How are you, man?
I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. I'm a little confused. I'm a little disappointed. Got some strange emotions going on, but I don't think I'm wrong, which is what stinks. I cannot. Now I don't need you for psychological evaluation, but maybe maybe I do. You can guide me here. I love that team a year ago. I understand the reasons and the limitations. Hartenstein couldn't be retained, and I know that you had to trade Dante and Randall to get Karl-Anthony Towns here. But the soul of this team is different, and I don't know how it improves to the point where, one, it feels like last year, but more importantly, two, they can actually win a championship.
You know, BT, what I could say is the locker room last year was phenomenal. And I'm not talking about just like when the media is in there for pregame, postgame. Just guys would talk about how, they could joke around all the time, and then they knew when it was time to be serious, to get down to business, and there was a togetherness that was there that, frankly, I haven't seen yet from this group. And I'm not basing that, again, on being in the locker room and hanging around. It's more so just having conversations with people. And I think, the togetherness, the chemistry, it's not there this year as it was last year. And I think you see that on the floor at times with this group.
Which is weird because they imported another Villanova kid. Now, I know they lost one there, but you bring in Bridges there. So really, Karl-Anthony Towns seems to have a pretty good personality. I'm not in the locker room. Yes. You are. Yeah, he seems to be, approachable, affable. And I'm sure Bridges is a good young man, but I don't know. He doesn't seem to have a lot of juice. And I'm not just talking about, some of the strange games he's had shooting the ball. I think he's been maybe a little overly criticized, in my opinion. But I guess I'm just going to ask you, is he a dog? Is he the kind of player that goes on the road, Game 5, Game 6, pivotal spot, whatever, and shows up and steps up? Is he that kind of guy? I don't know.
Look, in Phoenix, they loved him. He was more of a 3-and-D guy then, but he made big plays on a team that, went to the finals. And so he was there. In Brooklyn, you saw, I think he was miscast as a number one guy for an offense. And then here he's back to a number 3 role. And I think his reputation is such that he can do that. And he is a guy who is capable of that. I think, just based on what we've seen this year, I think he's still maybe getting comfortable in that role. Obviously, shot the ball really well last night against Philly early on. But I just think, defensively, it's not where I think the expectation was, and it's unfair to blame one player. There's 5 guys on the floor.
Yeah.
We don't know the defensive schemes when we see somebody maybe get burned or not contest the shot. But just in general, the defense has been so poor. So often this year, and I look at OG and I look at Mikal, and that's the strength of those 2 guys, and that's why you pay those guys, you trade the picks for those guys, and it just hasn't worked on the defensive end. And you have to look at Bridges a little bit, in my opinion, there.
Talk to Ian Begley. Beggs, of course, SNY NBA Insider, host of the Putback, SNY's digital NBA show. Ian, what kind of job do you think Tom Thibodeau's doing this year?
You can talk about, recently it was McBride should have been playing more than Precious when they were dealing with the injuries. And you can talk about in-game adjustments, adjusting the rotation. That's all fair game. But I think just in a big picture sense, he's gotten you to a place where you haven't been in so long that the game-to-game stuff certainly matters. But if you look big picture, look where you are. Look where he's taking you. Now, look, if they flame out first round and it's a big disappointment, there's certainly going to be conversations about his job security because that's the nature of the beast. But to me, getting on him late February when you're 16 games over 500, it's more so the nature of this fan base, understandably, wants to win, desperate to win, and it's less so kind of like a realistic evaluation of an NBA head coach.
Well, hold on. Let me push back on that. Let me stand up for the great, and I know you're not disparaging them, but I got a little bit of a different opinion for these great New York basketball fans. So I don't think Tom Thibodeau's doing a really good job this year. I don't, okay? And and I like Tom Thibodeau, but the regression against the elite teams is unacceptable. The performance against like average teams to me is alarming. Like if you really look at this year, the Knicks have beat up on trash, and they've even allowed, forget about the Celtics and the Cavs, they've even allowed like slightly above average teams like the Pistons, who are at least a little better than they've been, to waltz into the Garden, win not one but twice. I also look at a coach, when you lose and you give up 140 on a Friday to the Cavs, and on national TV you're not ready to play the first quarter of the game, you give up basically 40 points. I'm not saying it's all Tom Thibodeau's fault, but to me, partly, I got to drop some of that blame at his doorstep. So if I had to grade Tom Thibodeau, I would say right now for me, this year, and I like him, but this year, C+. I don't like what I've seen. And Ian, I'll take it a step further. You say if like they were to flame out in the first round, I'm of the mindset, based on what they were supposed to be and all the other stuff that we've talked about a million times with the 5 first-round picks, what else could they do? If they were to lose a second-round series and it's not competitive, I'm moving on. Me.
Look, there's nothing you said there that I would strongly disagree with. There's certainly elements of this season, the ones that you mentioned, that you can put partially on the head coach. He's not perfect. The thing that I'll never understand, regardless of how it's explained to me, is having your key players in a game that's pretty much been decided in the closing minutes of a game. To me, you're playing with fire. I'll never get that. And if he does get burned in that scenario, it's going to be a disaster. But by and large, look, I look at it as, is the coach connected to the locker room? Is he connected to the best players in the team? Because to me, that's where it starts in the NBA. Mm-hmm. And the answer for Thibodeau is he is. And look, that doesn't excuse or explain why they've struggled against these top teams, why they were not prepared for that Boston game. That's still at the fault of Thibodeau partially. But in a big picture sense, he's still connected to that locker room. He's connected to that front office. And I don't know, I just see that as valuable, especially for a franchise that has not had stability for so long. Now you have it, and things may go left a little bit in the spring, but I don't know if that's a reason to shake the apple cart in that way. We'll see how it plays out. Maybe the top of the top there, Jim Dolan and everybody disagrees, but I don't think Tom Thibodeau deserves to be let go or under a great amount of scrutiny unless things go incredibly sideways. That's
Ian Begley, SNY NBA Insider. He's got the digital show as well. It's called The Putback. BT and Sal here on The Fan. Why in the world did he put Karl Anthony Towns back in that game the other day when he went back to the locker room?
That's what I was just talking about, BT. That's part of what happens day to day, game to game. I'll never understand it. I don't know, however you want to explain it publicly. Karl Towns said he wanted to go back in. That's fine. Don't you have to protect him, though?
Yes.
In that instance?
Yep.
And so, I'll never understand that again. Playing with fire there, and if you happen to get burned, like there was an instance a couple years back where R.J. Barrett turned his ankle late in one of these games, it's going to be an issue, and it's not going to bode well for Tom Thibodeau. So I don't understand why it happens. He's got his reasons. The players don't seem to complain about it. So it seems to be just a media fan frustration,
topic.
Which to me is very valid. But look, it's risky. It's risky, and I don't know. I don't have an answer there.
I got you.
You don't have a good one.
Well, you didn't do it, so you shouldn't have the answer. I just want your opinion. Good job on that. When do you think Mitch suits up for the first time?
I think you get him this weekend. Wouldn't be, I guess I don't want to say wouldn't be stunned, but I think Friday, at least to my knowledge, is a possibility as of earlier this week. So for him, it's like, how do you feel when you wake up after these practices, these workouts? He had a full practice Tuesday. Tom Thibodeau said that he felt good yesterday, the day after that practice. So I would think you're going to see him this weekend. If it's not Friday, it's Sunday against Miami.
Are you of the mindset that, he's got to shed the rust and in cardio, he's got to get that up to speed? If he stays healthy and he gets to that point, you think he starts and you have Cat at the 4? Is that something that happens for the playoffs, you think?
Look, if he gets back to 90% of where he was pre-injury, you have to take a hard look at it, and they will take a hard look at it. And I could see it working. And look, if it's clear that they're having success with that lineup, Tom Thibodeau would change the starting lineup. I don't think he'd hesitate to do it. In this hypothetical, I do think they would. But you're talking about a lot for Mitchell Robinson here. So much time off, the foot injury. You're not doing a ton of cardio, so I think it's going to take a little while here for him to get to that point.
Yeah.
But they want to take a long look at Towns, Robinson, those lineups. They're gonna certainly give it a run here once he gets back on the floor.
This is more of an open-ended, broader down the road question, and maybe this is part of my frustration here. How do you think Karl Anthony Towns is going to age?
Year 10.
You know what I'm saying? Just looks a little
some injuries. Yeah, he's had some injuries. I mean, I think that it's hard for me to assess just not being around him that much before this season. But he's not heavy. He's not heavy, and he uses his body a lot, but he's not like a Charles Oakley type where he's operating with reckless abandon. So I think you couple all that with the idea that shot's not going anywhere anytime soon. I think he would age. I think he'll age pretty well.
I just think and again, listen, of course, I watched him at Kentucky. I watched him, All-Star games, some T-Wolf games, not every night, obviously, like now. It just looks like he's laboring to get up and down the court. And that's why I push it to 32, 33. And I don't want to say that that's the direct source of my consternation here, but I don't know what else. And this is a deeper issue for the summer or whatever, but I don't know how much. Well, I know they don't have much flexibility. Is there anything that they can do that would resemble a big move? I don't mean get rid of Towns, but add to this core to make them better for the next couple of years? Or is that it? They fired all the first-round bullets with Bridges.
There's a nuclear option, obviously, if things go way south, that, you move one of the OG or Bridges or move a big contract like that to make a major move. Mm-hmm. But that's nuclear and unlikely, I think. But if you're talking about, bolstering the bench and something of that nature, you're going to have to trade a Miles McBride, I think, to get something back that's of value. And do you want to do that?
I don't. I
guess it depends on who's available. Yeah. Or you trade a Mitchell Robinson and something else, and then you get something back. So you're going to have to sacrifice a lot. Obviously, the draft capital is gone. So it's either nuclear or you're losing a rotation player. And, it's going to be difficult because you also have that second apron. You can be above it, but you don't want to be above it for too long because it's onerous from a tax perspective. So it's tricky. There are avenues, but there's not an obvious easy one.
Yeah, no, there's not. And just to clean this up, I've mentioned it a few times. I know you get into the weeds on this. So if there is a buyout that would, in theory, be attractive, like if he's making over, $12.5 million, the Knicks can't sign him, right? Something like that?
That's right. Before I answer the question, if you're driving right now, pull over. I don't want anybody to fall asleep. But yes, you cannot sign somebody who had that it is at $12.5 million roughly.
Yeah.
The Knicks can't sign that guy if he gets bought out. Underneath that, you can, but they're also right under that second apron, right? And they're coming up on a date here, and I think it's tomorrow, technically, where they have enough room under the second apron to add a veteran minimum deal. And I would expect them to do that, maybe not tomorrow, if not tomorrow, over the weekend or over the next few days. And look, T.J. Warren is a guy who was with them in camp, played at the G League at 31, had a good season down there. I think he's going to get consideration. Chuma Akeki is another guy who's going to get consideration for that 15th spot. But, yeah, if you're looking at a big money player who gets bought out, the Knicks do not, or are prohibited, I should say, from signing that kind of player.
And because I'm not exactly sure, do the Cavaliers and the Celtics and the Thunder have that wiggle room, or are they limited as well? Do you know?
I believe Celtics for sure. The Cavs, I would have to check, but I would assume so, just based on the salaries that they have, that they would have the same limitations.
I got you. Hey, one more for you. I love this. Love talking shop. I've always been a fan of yours. Even even back in the day, Ian Begley, SNY, NBA Insider, host of the Putback, SNY's digital show. Are you a believer that, because you've seen this whispered, not too loud yet, but it's getting a little more traction, are you believing that maybe the some of the stars on this team are a little too immersed in the podcast world and maybe a little less eye on the prize oriented, or you think that's unfair?
Look, I love Kendrick Perkins. It's a strong take that he gave. You look at Paul George last night. He cracked 20 points for the first time in a while after he said he was taking a podcast break. So maybe there's something to it. But, just talking to people around it, I don't think this is taking anything away from their jobs here. I don't think this is at all a kind of distraction, like the stuff gets scheduled around let's say this, Brandon. You see a podcast come out tomorrow or right after that game against Philadelphia. They weren't interviewing the person a day before. They interviewed him probably a couple of weeks earlier.
Yes.
So it's all kind of scheduled out around basketball. I don't see it taken away from basketball. I understand the premise. And I think we're all going to miss Paul George's podcast, quite frankly. But I don't think it's an issue here in New York for these two guys.
I agree. I think that was a ridiculous take by Perk. I was totally off base, unfair. All right, man. Hey, listen, if you get bored with these Knicks, jump on the Johnny's train. Let's go.
Oh, I like your Johnnies.
Yeah.
I love everything that's happening there, man. It's going to be a fun March. Thanks to Rick and the boys. I'm looking forward to it. And BT, it's always great to be with you, man. Appreciate you having me on.
It was a good chat, man. I think Knicks fans enjoyed it. Thanks, Ian. I'll talk to you soon, buddy. There he is, Ian Begley, NBA insider for SNY, host of the Putback, SNY's digital NBA show. I will get back to the call. This show went fast. We only have an hour here. 888-808-1019.